Y'all, we are back. We are back with LaShawn. Hey, LaShawn. How
Hey,
you doing?
everybody.
Look, we had some technical difficulties. We had some stuff going on. But welcome back to It's Been a Journey podcast. Today, we are sharing a story that is raw, heartfelt, and deep, y'all. Let me tell you this. She has something to tell you. Our guest today, Miss LaShawn Poole. You've been doing all right. How was your day today?
Yes, it was. I had listen, I had one of those days to where I didn't have nothing for the people. I'm just being real raw today. I had nothing for the people. They have never seen me this quiet. I was extremely quiet at work all day, and they literally has been trying to figure out why I have been so quiet. And I
Well,
just
I'm
had
glad
to
that you
break
said it.
down and tell them, like, listen, I don't have it for the people today.
Well, look, you began your battle in middle school, and it carried a powerful question that started with, "Who is my dad?" What started as a question of curiosity grew
Mhm.
into isolation that we had that conversation about, and anger and
Yes.
confusion. So, what can you take us back to that day that started everything? What it felt like and looked like when it first the onset of the issues of who your father was.
Yes, so childhood beginnings. So it began for me when I was like literally in middle school. I was probably about in the like, I would say like the sixth grade, and because I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, that's where I was born at. I lived there through on and out throughout my childhood into my teenagehood. Um, and so I literally because I didn't have like growing up, I really didn't have like a father figure until later on down the line. Um and so I was in California at the time, and I remember asking my grandmother who all was at the hospital when I was born.
Mm,
And then she begins to tell me everybody who was there at the hospital that when I was born, and then she said your father. And in that moment, something on the inside of me clicked, and I was like, speaking of father, who is my dad? Who is my father? And
mm,
she really didn't give me much information. It was just like one of those things was like, well, he was at the hospital um, when you were born. And after that, maybe couple of years after your mom moved to Kansas City, uh, moved to Kansas City. And so that was just the gist of you know, that was just the gist of the conversation. And she was like, well, if you, if you want to know more about your dad, you're going to have to talk to your mom. And I was just like,
mm.
I was just like, okay. So I kind of, you know, was like, yeah, don't know how that's going to go, but okay.
So
So
before you go further, let me ask you about that because we didn't ever conversate. How was the relationship with your mother?
growing up the relationship with my mom was very it was a little interesting.
Mm,
And I say little interesting because biologically, um I'm the only girl.
mm,
And um my mom, she was a single mom for years. She was just a single mom. It was just us and her. So she worked a lot. She worked
mm,
a whole lot. So that meant aunties stepping in, godparents stepping in, god sisters stepping in to pretty much help raise us, and watch us. But I when I was, starting probably like about the fifth grade on, I was back and forth between Kansas City and Los Angeles, California. So I
Okay.
moved, so starting early, at an early age, I moved around. I moved around because I
Okay.
was back and forth between, like I said, Los Angeles, California, living with my grandmother, and then, back here in Kansas City. Well, it was Kansas City, Kansas, at the time, living, with my mom. So it was very interesting because I started out as a happy go lucky girl.
Mm-hmm.
um I was very happy, joyous. um Anybody I met, I didn't meet strangers, and my mom would tell people, well, when my daughter meets people, she doesn't meet strangers.
Right.
Like, she just like warms up to them. It don't take much for her to warm up to them, and all of that stuff, and it was true. So, but like I said, I mean, our relationship for the most part, it was okay.
Well, yeah, because as you got older, I remember we talked about and you mentioned withdrawing from others and feeling anger take over, right?
Hmm.
So, can you walk us through how that experience unfold and how it impact your sense of belonging?
So, going back to pretty much when I was like in middle school, a lot of this stuff started to unfold in middle school. I had um I had like a couple of family members on my mother's side of the family and my grandmother's side of the family who I became very close. I had an auntie that I was extremely close with, and I had a cousin that I was extremely close with. And I remember when my auntie had passed away.
Mm,
That is when partially the isolation began,
right.
because I felt like I didn't it just felt like the very person that I, could talk to about anything, be around, be myself, was, no longer here. So who
Mm,
was I going to have to, fill that void? So
right.
um it was during that time to where I, began to slowly but surely kind of, stay to myself. I didn't, I went from this happy go lucky girl to now someone who was just quiet all the time and just like
Mm,
really staying to herself, not saying a whole lot, not, talking a whole lot, not really wanting to be, around people, as much, and whatever the case may be. um and the isolation, it started off small, but then as
mm-hmm,
time went on, as time progressed, it's like the isolation got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And when it got to the point to where, like, I was literally not talking to anybody, I would literally come home from school or from wherever, and I would literally just go in my room and I would literally just stay to myself. Like, even if we had family gatherings, family functions, I would literally not say anything to anybody. And this became very concerning
mm-hmm,
for my mother. So I remember vaguely, and I remember as it happened in the fifth as it happened yesterday. I remember being in school, and I remember her and my auntie coming to pick me up from school, and I remember them taking me to a place here in Kansas City called Corporate Woods. And it's interesting because they still have that place around, and it's a counseling place where you go get counseling. And at the time I didn't know what it was, because they
right.
just picked me up from school and I didn't know where I was going. And then I know I just get to this building, this huge big building. And when I get to the building, we go inside, we're sitting there, and then they call my name. And there was about three or four of them, and they had on like their white jackets with their little clipboards. And I'm looking around like, okay, what's about to happen? And I remember going into the room, sitting down with them. They closed the door. They're asking me what my name was, what's today's date, what, basic, real surface basic questions.
Mm-hmm.
And me being me at this time, because the truth of the matter is my attitude had became real bad.
Mm.
um and I got smart with them. I was like, listen, I don't know who y'all are, why I'm here, but if if y'all don't know my name, then why are we even having this conversation?
Right.
Like, so I literally was like, well, I don't know what this is for. So this is gonna be a waste of my time, and this is going to be a waste of your time. So let's not. And I literally got up and walked out.
Mm.
I literally got out and walked out, and I was so upset. Like when my mom and them, I'm like,
Did you feel betrayed in a sense?
I did, because I'm just like, if you wanted to know what was wrong with me, why not come to me first? Why not give me the opportunity? Even if I couldn't even articulate it or put it into words, why not give me the chance or the opportunity to be able to, you know, explain what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it, why my emotions are
Mm-hmm.
where they are. Um, and so like um, from that time and that moment, that was like the beginning of the whole learning, eventually learning of mental illness. Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't, like, growing up, I never knew mental, I couldn't even tell you what that looked like or what it was, because
Right.
it was never, discussed. It was never, talked about.
Right.
And so it was something that I was extremely clueless to and unaware to, until as I began to, go into like early adulthood, actually.
Right. So we get to the point where we meeting dad.
Mm-hmm.
And when you finally met your father, and there was confusion and tension within the new family, right?
Yeah, yes.
Can you go through that experience with us and unfold and unpack your sense of belonging and how you didn't feel, the secrets and the
So I was living in Louisville, Kentucky. I was living in Louisville, Kentucky with a friend of mine and her family at this
Mhm.
time. And this is probably the start of me finding out about like depression and all that. Um, I just remember living with her, and I would just always sleep. I would always sleep. Um, and I didn't really want to, be around nobody. I wanted to like be by myself. And I remember her telling me that this I was depressed. And was like, no, I'm not depressed. What do you mean? I don't have no reason to be depressed.
Mhm.
I've never been depressed a day in my life, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So I went through that, that phase, that part of my life of, going back and forth with her, telling her that I'm not depressed. She's telling me I'm depressed, and whatever the case may be. And I'm like, all I want to know is just, I'm just trying to, find out who my father is.
Mhm.
And when I said that to her, she asked me if I knew
So hopefully she'll come back. I don't know if we lost her. But y'all, this is good information. Depression is a common, they say it's common in a series of mental health conditions characterized by persistent feeling of sadness, loss of interest, and low energy that significantly interfere with your daily functioning. And that's what she was talking about, how she dealt with mental illness. And it all stemmed from the question in her childhood, like, who is my father? And y'all know a lot of children have that. They could be passing their dad and not even know is him or her, right?
Sorry about that, guys. Um,
That's okay.
so she began to ask me questions about who my father was. Well, no, did I know his name? And so I just gave her a first and last name because that's literally what all I had to go off. That's all I had to go off on. I didn't know anything else. And so she was like, okay. Um, and I was like, okay, what? um she was like, let me see what I can do. Now remind you, I prior to this I had tried to, you know, like locate him to see if I could find him myself, but I didn't have much luck. And the crazy part is I don't even remember if I looked on Facebook or not.
Right.
um but some time had went on, and I had became extremely at this time, and during this time I had became extremely like depressed. um and so the depression was like extremely deep, real deep. And so I ended up going to uh outpatient. I end up going to an outpatient mental facility,
Okay.
so that could try to begin to, help figure some things out and what was going on and to see. And I remember her coming by to see me because like we could have visitors and stuff like that. And I remember her coming by and she was like, well, I have some news for you. She's like, I got some good news for you. And I was like, oh, okay. She was like, I found your father. Wait, what? She
Hmm.
was like, I found your father. And I was like, you did? She was like, yes. She was like, he lives in, California. And we talked for a long time. And
Mm.
I have his information. And I told him that I would, give you his information. And when you're ready to call him, just he's waiting for you to call. So this
Wow.
is where I had to begin to process that, or attempt to process that information. So in that moment, I was like, okay, wow. And I began to start feeling all these different kind of emotions. Now, let me just say this. I During this part of my life, I wasn't one who knew how to deal with my emotional state.
Mm.
I would just shut down. And so I really didn't go into like a shutdown. I was just kind of almost like feeling stuck in a sense, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
Um, and I was just like, okay, so what do I do now? Like, she really found my dad. Like, she gave me his number and everything. And from that day that she had told me, it took me like 3 weeks
Mm.
before I had called him. And when I called him, I was still at the place that I was at. I was still there. So I remember calling him. Um, and he was it like as if he had been, waiting for this call all his life.
Mm.
Oh, and I was just like, well, I introduced him. I introduced myself to him, and I was like, well, hi, my name is LaShawn, and I'm your daughter. Don't know if you knew that, but I'm your daughter. And then from there, like, I was just like, what happened? Like, where you been?
Mm,
Um, but the thing of it was, he was married, had a daughter, had a whole life, and this is where it gets a little bit rocky.
mm,
So when I would talk to him, and every time I would talk to him, his wife was like there in the same room
mm,
as him, and she would literally have to be a part of every conversation that we had. It got to the point to where she would get on the phone, or she would answer his phone and like, well, who are you? Where did you come from? He don't have no money. And I'm like, wait, let's just stop this right here, right now.
mm.
I'm his daughter. I don't want his money. I have my own money. I'm just trying to establish a relationship with him. That's
Right.
it. That's all. Now, I don't know what's been told to you prior to all of this. I don't know. But I'm not, I'm not trying to break up his home, his marriage, or anything like that. I, I'm his oldest daughter, and I'm just learning about him, and I'm just trying to hopefully be able to build and establish some kind of relationship.
But it was
Um,
also another sibling, right?
yes. So, he had Um, well, it was me and my twin brother, and then he had a daughter.
Right.
And his daughter she was probably about like maybe like 12, 13 at the time. Um, and it had got to the point to where she wanted me to get a DNA test
Mm,
to prove that I was his daughter. And I was like, listen, I'm not doing none of that. The only way I get a DNA test unless you pay for it. Now, if you want to pay for it, then absolutely, let's go, let's get it. That's how I was. I was like straight to the. I was like not playing no games, because I'm like, no, like
did
I'm
you
just
and
trying
your
to.
brother have conversation about the situation?
Mm. There was no kind of conversation had. Um, like, I told him after the fact, and
Mm-hmm.
he was like, that's if that's what you want to do, that if that's what you want to
Okay.
do, that's fine. I don't want no parts of it.
Okay.
uh so he felt how he felt, and I respected that.
Right.
um and so eventually my father's wife had, she ended up calming down, and I found out later on the reason why she was like that, because it was told to her that he didn't have any children.
Mm. So she had to deal with the shock and the lie.
Yes.
Ugh.
And so I was, once that information was told to me, I was, my conversation with her and my approach with her, had to shift, and
Right.
it had to be a totally different, conversation, at this point. Um, at this point. And so, like, but me and my dad, I mean, from the time, like I said, from the time that I reached out to him and called him, from that initial call, we agreed to talk like every week. And so that's what it was. We would talk, we would, talk every week. just to, try to build that relationship, establish that, father daughter, relationship. And it was like we probably talked for about maybe 3 or 4 months, if that. It wasn't even a full 6 months. Um, because the last conversation that I had with him, it was about me during that time possibly coming to working something out to come to California to meet him face to face. So
Mm-hmm.
that was like the last conversation that I had with him. But in between all of that, I was still dealing with the depression. The depression grew like stronger and stronger, to where it went from like depression to me having like suicidal thoughts, sort of
Mm.
suicidal ideation, to like suicide attempts. And
Mm.
I would end up like in the hospital, but I would only stay in the hospital probably like for like 3 or 4 days, because like I wasn't really open and honest with them about what was really going on. Like I
Mm.
would just tell them whatever they wanted to hear to get me out of the hospital.
Right. Mm.
um and so I was still like, you know, dealing with all of that while, you know, trying to establish this new relationship, you know, with my biological father. And so it was a lot. It was
Yeah.
definitely a lot.
So you shared with me about receiving that heartbreaking phone call. How did it lead to you stop eating and cutting communication off, and just what happened with that phone call that you received from your stepsister?
So I was back in Kansas City, well, during this time I was in Kansas City, Missouri, and I was working at a place called Home Depot, and I was working overnight. And prior to that, the weekend prior to that, I was out with some friends from church, and we were celebrating a friend of mine's birthday, that birthday celebration, that entire weekend. So we churched all weekend long, and by the time we got in the house, it was like late. But my father had called me this particular weekend that I was at church, and I was like, I saw that he was calling, but by the time that I got home, it would have been too late to call California. So I was just
Mm.
like, I'll call him next week when things slow down. And it was a Tuesday, and I was literally getting ready to go to work. And I was outside on the porch, and I was on Facebook just scrolling. I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but I was on Facebook. And I get this message from my sister,
Mm-hmm.
my dad's daughter. And she says, "Hi sister, our dad is dead."
Mm.
Wait, what? So I'm looking at this message, and you know how you read something and you gotta kind of try to like process
Mm.
what you just read to make sure you're reading what you're reading. And so it was one of those like, wait, what? And so I looked at the message again, and I just looked at it. And so I immediately started calling my dad's phone. No answer.
Mm.
No answer. Um, and so then I go to his Facebook page, and I started seeing all of these rest in peace posts. And I'm like, wait, I'm like, wait, this ain't no,
Right.
this so I'm calling his phone again, still no answer. So I end up going to work that night, and while I was at work, his wife called, and she was like, Hey, LaShawn. I said, hey. She said, I'm calling you to let you know your father died.
Mm.
When you said my world stopped,
Because you didn't naturally in person ever meet him.
my world literally stopped and I literally was like stuck. It
Uh-huh.
felt like it felt like the world around me had literally stopped. And I remember, and she was like, well, I was just calling to, let you know, and, I'll be in touch, to let you know when the services will be and all of that. And I was just like, okay. And I hung up the phone and I remember being at work. And for the rest of the time that I was at work, I couldn't even function.
Uh-huh.
Like I couldn't even I was like, okay, I gotta go home. I cannot I can't function. And so when I got off work, went home, and when you say I went into like a deep depression,
Mm.
I shut everybody out. I was not talking to anybody. I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. It got to the point to where a friend of mine, at that time, her and her husband, had to come by and pick me up, and I stayed over their house.
Mm.
I went into like a straight isolation. When I say I wasn't talking to nobody, I wasn't talking to nobody. And then it was interesting because I would have people come to me and be like, well, that kind of knew the dynamics and the history of me and my father, was like, well, why are you acting like this, and y'all really didn't know each other. And so I'm dealing, I'm getting that from certain individuals while trying to attempt to process that my father had passed away. um and I just remember being into a severe deep depression that it took me a while to um come out of. I couldn't shake. I was just like, this is crazy.
Mm.
And at 40 years old.
She'll be right back in. Her phone went out. But to recap you on what's going on, LaShawn, who has been through a lot of traumatic things in her childhood. And it started off from the question of who is my father. She never got a chance to meet her dad. She verbally talked to him. Somebody located him for her and everything, but she did not get a chance to visually see him. And I don't know about you, but I had my dad there, and just the idea of what she went through is heartbreaking. So her phone may have went out, but I'm just stay with me because God turned that thing around. And I'm telling you, He is so faithful. He is faithful to do what He said He will do. So when she comes back, so have any of y'all been through that where
Sorry about that.
that's
Individuals.
okay. We see on and I gave a little recap of what you were saying. So now we want to talk about that turning point. You went to the funeral, right?
Mm.
So tell us about that, just that emotion at that door. What did
Um,
it take to go in there? Because I know.
so I remember getting to the funeral home, and when I had got because my aunt and uncle had to pick me up, and they took me to the funeral home because my father was actually cremated. But
Mm,
before he got cremated, I had an aunt who had called the funeral home of where he was and had told them, hold off on the cremation because he has an older daughter and she has never met them.
Mm.
Uh she she yeah, she has never met her father. So if y'all can, just hold off on the cremation, allow her to, see him before y'all, cremate him. And so they honored the request, and I remember getting there, and I remember walking into the funeral home, and I remember walking into the office first, and it wasn't a big funeral home at all. But I remember walking in there, and I remember a older Caucasian lady, and she was like, "Hi, you must be LaShawn." And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." And she was like, "I'm
Mm.
so sorry for your loss." I said, "Thank you."
Mm.
She was like, we didn't cremate him because your aunt had called and told us to see if we could wait, to cremate him so that you could see him. And she said, whenever you're ready, we can take you to the room. And I kind of, took this huge deep breath, and
Mm.
I was like, okay. I was like,
Right.
okay. So walking from the office to where the room was, it wasn't far, but I promise you, it felt like the longest walk ever.
Mm.
And I remember walking, and she was like, "He's right in here. Just take your time, take as much time as you need, and whenever you're ready to go in there, you can let us know. We can go in there with you, or if you want to go in there by yourself, whatever you want to do." And I was like, okay. So my aunt and uncle is like standing behind me, and I stood there for about a good, like, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And I opened the door. And when I opened the door, um, of course, his body was there, and I stood there. I stood there for about 10 minutes before I said anything.
Mm.
And I'm looking around in the room, and I was like, okay. And I took another, deep breath. And so I was just like, "Hi, Dad. I'm LaShawn. I'm your oldest daughter." Um, I went like it's literally like I was like talking to him, and I was just telling him that, I was the one that was talking to him on the phone, trying to, get to know him and, have a relationship with him. And I was like, sorry that we did not get the chance to, meet each other in person. Um, but I pray I can make you proud of me one day.
Mm.
And I leaned over, and I kissed him on the forehead. And after I did that, I stood there for about 10 more minutes. And I was like, okay, this is like really happening. Like, this
Mm.
is, really real. Um, and I remember leaving the uh leaving the funeral home, and we went back to the hotel. My stomach was in knots the entire trip. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. They had to make me eat. Even with them trying to make me eat, I would not I didn't eat. I didn't I didn't eat because I couldn't shake. In my mind, I was like, a child should never have to meet. I would wish
Right.
this upon my worst enemy. A child should never have to meet. This is not how you meet your parent.
Right.
Like, this is um and so got through the funeral. Um it was a bit interesting, but got through the memorial service, and then end up coming back home to Kansas City. And the the depression got deeper, because now
Mm.
I'm not only feeling depression, but I'm feeling a sense of being rejected, a sense
Mm.
of, rejection. And I remember saying, I don't know if the rejection was worse when he was not a part of my life,
Right.
or did the rejection get deeper when he passed away.
Mm,
I felt like a deeper part of, rejection. And by this time of my life, I'm an adult. By this time of my life, I'm an adult, and I'm still trying to filter through my emotional state, and dealing with, like I said, depression. Then the depression turned into dealing with hearing voices and becoming, suicidal, and having different suicidal, attempts.
mm,
So this is just like a ripple effect of everything that it,
mm,
took place. And by this time, this is where, like I said, the depression starts even more. Then it goes from depression to, dealing with, hearing voices, to, wanting to, end my life, to, me, like I said, me having several attempts of attempting to, end my life.
yeah. So what was that turning point for you that you reached out and just had hope? How did you even
So
gain that?
So the turning point, I would say, happened maybe about mm, the turning point, I want to say, probably happened around, like, a little bit, like, maybe about four, maybe between 3 to 5 year mark. I would say is when the turning point happened. I had like a manic episode.
Mm,
And it was so bad to where, it literally, like, scared me. And I remember checking myself into the hospital, and I remember just telling them I just remember telling them that I need y'all to help me.
mm,
Like, I need y'all to, help me. And, they assured me that, they was going to, help me. So of course, being in the hospital, you're talking to the psychiatrist. You're talking to
mm,
the psychiatrist every day. Um, you're seeing a social worker, every day. You have these groups that you attend you know, that is there to, help you process, with whatever mental illness that you're, dealing with. And by this point in my life, they had diagnosed me with several different mental illness. It was like borderline personality disorder, um, suicidal ideation, bipolar, schizoaffective. So they had all these different
mm,
forms of mental illness that they, had diagnosed me with. And then, going through the process of getting on medication, them putting me on, me putting on different medications, trying different medications to see, you know, what medication is going to help, which medication is not going to help. So it was at that point to where, um, while I knew this was the reality that was before me, deep, 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 deep down inside, I knew that it wasn't my end all. And I
mm.
knew that it wasn't you know, I knew that it wasn't the final say.
Right.
And so, because by this time, I had dealt with it for so long and so many years silently, I was at a point to where I could no longer deal with it silently.
Mm, good.
I had to, make a conscious decision. I had to make a conscious decision that, you know, I wanted to, help them help me.
Right.
Um, and so I had made a conscious decision that, yes, this I know what they're saying and I know what's on documentation and I know what's on paper, but um listen,
Mhm.
this is not, this is not why I'm here, or this is not the purpose of why, I'm here, you know on earth,
Mhm.
or whatever the case may be. So I had to, in that moment, I had to um make a conscious decision, like I said, to begin to advocate for myself,
Mhm.
and starting the process of, my healing. So once I had made this conscious decision, was like, okay, this is my reality, this is what it is. Now what are you going to do with it? Are you going to stay stuck, or are you going to participate in your own healing and do the
Mhm.
necessary work? And so it was in that moment to where I made a conscious decision that I was going to begin to do the work to my healing. And was it easy? Absolutely not. Did I have setbacks? Absolutely. Did I have moments to where I wasn't okay? Absolutely. Did I have moments to where I felt like I couldn't do this and it was going to be what it was? Absolutely. Did I have uh moments and times to where my faith and my trust in God was shaky? Absolutely, it was. And that's the reality of it, because there were times and moments to where all I saw is what I saw in front of me, and I couldn't see past that. I couldn't see
Right.
nothing else. And it took for people coming into my life fighting for me when there were moments I couldn't, and times to where I couldn't fight for myself, and being strong for me until I was
Mhm.
able to, be strong for myself and get my strength back, and bounce back. And so once I had got to that place to where I knew that this wasn't going to be the end all for me. And even though it was the reality in that moment and at that time, like I said, I had to make that conscious decision to either stay stuck or heal.
Mhm.
Um, and so I make the decision, was like, listen, I want to heal from this. I want to be free. I want to be delivered. I want to be whole. And that took a lot of work. And I'm still on the journey to healing, but I'm no longer silent. Um
Right.
I have become extremely transparent over the last past 3 to 4 years. I have become extremely transparent about my journey of mental health, and mental illness, and what that looks like I said, for years I suffered in silence.
Mhm.
There was times to where I couldn't have these kind of conversations that I'm having now.
Right.
There was seasons and times to where I couldn't articulate and tell you, or have a conversation with you and tell you what was wrong with me. All I knew that is I wasn't okay.
Mhm.
And I needed somebody to, help me figure out what was wrong with me. But now that's not the case. I'm able to, even in my times that I'm not okay, or I have my days, or I have my moments, I'm able to, articulate and say, hey, I'm not having a good day today. Today, I just need a mental day. Or, and I'm also learning how to deal with my emotions. I'm learning how to sit with my emotions. I'm learning how to allow myself to feel the different emotions, but then making the conscious decision to not stay stuck in that emotional state.
Right.
I'm learning my triggers. I'm learning, what triggers me. And then once I, find out what my triggers are, then, I act accordingly. um I've become this big this big person who advocates for myself, even when I'm talking to the psychiatrist, even when I'm talking to my case manager, I'm learning to ask all the necessary questions, when it comes to, different things. And like I said,
Mhm.
having now tools and resources. I see a therapist every week. I see a case manager every week. I have an amazing support system that supports me. I have people in my life that God has strategically set up in my life. And I'm able to, if I need somebody to talk to, I'm able to reach out to them and say, hey, like, this is what's going on. Like, and they're able to give me, different insight, to look at things in a different, perspective. Um, so there are just different things that, that I have in place that, helps me. And like I said, I for those who know me and follow me on Facebook, you know that I go live, and I've shared my story in the past many, many, many times on, social media, Facebook, sharing my own journey and opening up and, being raw and, transparent as I can be, about my journey, because I know what it looks like to suffer in silence. I know what it looks like to feel like you don't have nobody that you can trust, because you don't know how they're going to handle you. You don't know how they're going to respond to you. You don't know what they're going to say. You don't know if they're going to ask you a bunch of questions.
Right.
I had to, get to a place to where I'm like, okay, yes, I take medication, but that's not gonna be, the final say for the,
Right. That's not just my story.
right, that's just not right. Exactly. So, and I'm very, even when I do my Facebook lives, I'm extremely transparent with people about my journey, because like I said, I know what that looks like to feel like you're by yourself. And I know when it comes to mental health and mental illness, yes, it's being talked about a little bit more, but I know this is something that we don't talk about enough.
Right.
um and I think it's because a lot of times people don't have like a clear understanding of what it is and what it truly, truly looks like, until you are dealing with somebody who deals with it, on a, day to
Constantly.
day,
Right.
on a day-to-day basis. And
So
so,
what would you tell, I'm sorry, what would you tell someone they're suffering in silence? I'm gonna let
to
you handle that.
Okay, to anybody, and I say this even on my own Facebook lives, to anybody who is dealing with any form of mental health, mental illness, whether it be bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, schizoaffective, all that. If you are dealing with it in silence, know that you no longer have to deal with it by yourself. Know that there is somebody out there. You don't even need a whole lot of people, but there is somebody out there that who will pray with you, encourage you, and they will walk this journey out with you. You do not have to walk it out by yourself. You don't have to continue to suffer in silence. Know that there is help available. Know that there are resources available. Listen, you are looking at somebody who knows what that looks like. You are looking at somebody who knows what that feels like. I suffered for years in silence, and I did not talk about it. But it wasn't until I got to my breaking point when I decided to talk about it and begin to, share my own personal story and my own journey. And even in doing that, that has brought a lot of healing. That has tremendously helped me and my own journey to heal. So know that you do not have to suffer in silence. Listen, I don't have all the answers, but what I do know is I know that God can do the impossible. What I do know that is God is a healer. What I do know is God is a mind regulator. God is a heart fixer. God can do it. Listen, you were looking at somebody who the doctors said you're not going to be able to accomplish this because of that. You're not going to be able to accomplish this because of that. And I have accomplished so many different things while on my journey to healing. So know that you don't have to do it by yourself. Know that God has sent somebody to help you deal with it, and help you begin to get your journey to heal. But it starts with you. It starts with you making a conscious decision to want to heal. It starts with you making the conscious decision to do the work. It starts with you letting your guards down long enough to be able to let somebody in and let them help you walk this journey out. My name is LaShawn Poole. You can find me on Facebook. Um, so yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on with us. Look, we tried a new thing, y'all. We did it from the phone. This is my first time. I still had to do a little on the computer because I want to make sure I put down stuff, the key things that you talked about. So you did talk about, tell them how they could find your page so when you go live, they'll be there live and direct. Can you hear me, LaShawn? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? You still can't hear me? Lord, we tried something else. My mic is not muted. Well, y'all, thank y'all so much for coming on, hanging out with us. I don't know what happened with my mic, but I thank y'all so much, and hopefully y'all can hear us. I like to thank my guest, LaShawn, for coming on with us tonight. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We've been having technical difficulties, but I tell you, it's all good. That's we didn't have difficulties, then we know the enemy don't care nothing about what we talking about. So look,
Exactly.
thank you so much for coming on. It was a powerful testimonial story. I know it reached everyone. You can find her blog tomorrow afternoon on itsbeenajourney.com, and it'll give you a direct link to YouTube. You can look at it on here on Facebook for 30 days. That's what they give us, but it'll be on Spotify. I have a link for that also, where you can go and listen to it live over there, read the blog, and she'll tell you the rest in the live video. Is there anything else you would like to tell our audience?
Um, I will tell like as if I'm on my page. Listen, be
Mhm.
encouraged. Know that you don't have to go through this by yourself. Like I said, there is help available. There are resources out there. You just have to be willing to take the time out to make the conscious decision to do the work. Know that this is something that doesn't have to be your end all be all. Know that this is something that you can overcome. Know
Mhm.
that this is something that you can definitely heal from. And that God can deliver, God can restore, all of that. You just have to have the faith enough to know that He can do it and He will do it. Um, and you just have to trust Him even when you can't trace Him. Um, so
Yeah.
listen, it's been a pleasure to be able to share my story.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions that they want to ask me that you didn't get to ask me on here, please feel free to find me on Facebook, inbox me, and if I don't have the answers, we'll get the answers for you.
Yeah, give them that page because that's what I was asking you when you couldn't hear
Oh,
me. What is your page where they can find you?
my Facebook page is LaShawn Poole, LaShawnPoole. Just send me an inbox. If you need like some resources, definitely if you're definitely in the Midwest, I can definitely provide you with some resources that I have. But then I also have some other resources as well. So listen, we in this thing together. You don't have to walk this thing out by yourself. Know that you are looking at somebody who, like I said, at one point suffered in silence for years. But that's no longer the case. I'm on my journey to heal. I'm on my journey to wholeness. I'm on my journey to freedom. And it's possible. So
It is.
that's that.
So tell us before you go, tell us about your book that's available on Amazon. I
So
don't want
I
to go
do
without.
so I do have a book that I wrote back in 2014. It's actually called Damaged but Not Destroyed. And I just share pretty much my story in that book. And I'm actually getting ready to work on another book called Behind the Journey. Now, Behind the Journey is so dear and near to me. It is my testimony about my journey of healness and wholeness with battling with mental illness. And being saved and being in the church, and what that looks like,
Mm,
what that
mm,
actually looks like. Just like I'm having a candid raw conversation this evening with my big sister. Listen, I this book, if you know anybody that is dealing with any form of mental illness, and just need some kind of encouragement, or need something to read to kind of help provide resources, this will be the
mm.
book. My desire and my prayer is that I will have this book ready to go and ready to be published by, I'm giving myself until like April or May of next year. So be on the lookout, stay tuned, keep your ears, eyes open for this book to come out. I'm so excited about uh,
I'm
beginning
excited.
to beginning to write this book and be able to share my story with the world, to
Yeah.
who may come in contact with this. So yes.
Well, thank you once again. If y'all enjoyed this, please like, tag, and share. Mental health is something that we all need to talk about, especially in the African American community. We didn't have that conversation when we was younger. It was like go take a nap or sit down somewhere. But listen, now we're sitting on couches. We're coming to Bible class. We're doing podcasts because we too need healing inside and out. Until next time, remember we are on this journey together. Stay there, LaShawn. Don't leave.